Uncle Hans explains the origins of Chinese characters. The simplification of traditional Chinese characters. What exactly is a simplified Chinese character? One of the first questions people ask when they start studying Chinese is this character a simplified Chinese character or a traditional Chinese character? Many characters are not simplified, so it does not make any difference. Some simplified characters are actually traditional characters. Ge, for instance, which means one of. Ge was a rare traditional character which originally had a different meaning. It was borrowed because of its pronunciation and possibly because of its similar meaning and because it was simpler to write as a simplification of the traditional character Ge. Most people will recognize it and say, oh, that's a simplified character. But it is technically a traditional character. Most simplified characters are modified forms of traditional characters that cannot be found in any older Chinese dictionaries. So, they are clearly simplified and not traditional characters. Hua, for instance. Hua never existed in any dictionary before. It is clearly a simplified form. The situation in 1919. The Baihua Revolution. In 1919, the Qing dynasty had just fallen, and big changes were beginning to take place. The Chinese written language had been stagnating for hundreds of years, and the written language was very far from the way people actually talked. Writing Chinese at that time was kind of like being forced to write like Chaucer when everybody spoke like Mark Twain. So, there started to be a movement to write characters more in line with the way people actually spoke. It was known as the Baihua Revolution, or the Plain Talk Revolution. By 1955, it had been going on for several decades. The situation in 1955, the simplification of Chinese characters. Language usually evolves naturally. In the entire history of written Chinese, no government has ever been able to force a particular set of characters on the people or force any significant simplification on the people. The Qin Shi Huang standardization of 221 BC may be an exception. Chinese characters have evolved in a natural way, independent of any overall government control. So, in 1955, there were several problems. In 1955, there were no really enforceable rules on exactly how you were supposed to write a traditional character. There were dictionaries and fonts, but the only thing that limited the infinite spread of variant characters was whether the other guy could read and understand what you wrote. Problem 1. Variants. A variant is where two characters have the exact same meaning and the exact same pronunciation, but different written forms and perhaps different logic. Some of these were common variants, some were rare garbage variants, personalized characters, and artistic garbage. This created a condition where the standard dictionary of the time, the Kangxi Dictionary, had more than 47,000 characters, of which about 40,000 would be classified as garbage characters. Most of these characters were so rare that the average Chinese may never see them in a lifetime. Problem 2. Stroke complexity and lost logic. Chinese characters are complicated, and although in theory all of them have logical pictographic origins, they are for the most part lost to history. So most Chinese blindly memorize thousands of characters, most of which have no obvious logic. Problem 3. A huge percentage of the population at that time was illiterate. Problem 4. There were a large number of personal names and place names that were nothing more than monstrosities. There is no point in learning a special character for someone's name whom you may never see again, or a place name of a place you may never go. How did they force simplification on the people in pre-computer times? Remember, in 1955, there were no computers. I ask myself, how can a government force several 100 million literate Chinese to learn 2,000 new rules to simplify 5,000 characters they already know? First, the law applied mainly to publishers. They had to learn the rules and make new fonts. Once the new fonts were made, they did not have to memorize the rules. They just had to publish everything, newspapers, books, etc., using the new fonts. All the teaching materials for grade school through high school were republished using the new fonts. And every new student had to learn from the new textbooks. Very quickly, within a few short years, every printed object in the country was in simplified Chinese. The average person at the time did not have to learn to write simplified Chinese. They only had to learn to read simplified Chinese, which was not that difficult. Because if you were literate in traditional Chinese, you could guess at most of the simplified characters. The teachers did not have to actually memorize all the rules. They just had to be able to read the simplified characters and teach out of the book. After a few years, everyone can recognize the new characters. After a couple of decades, every young adult knew how to write simplified Chinese, but could barely read traditional Chinese. Standards and de facto standards. When defining exactly what is a simplified character, we would want to know, number 1, by what authority? What government or industry authority made the rules, and what exactly were the rules? Number 2, by what logic? How did they come up with this simplification? The rules for defining exactly what is a simplified character have changed somewhat over the years, and are not exactly the same from place to place. But the following is a description of the government standards that are supposed to be in place today. They consist of the following 7 tables. Table 1. Common Variant Elimination List. The Common Variant Elimination List. DEP ET 字整理表. Variant characters are 2 or more characters which have the exact same pronunciation and the exact same meaning but different logic forms. In 1955, there were many variant characters which meant exactly the same thing. The variant elimination rule C192 G means that G should be replaced by G. In 1955, the Ministry of Culture of the People's Republic of China, 中华人民共和国文化部, and the 中国文字改革委员会, or the Chinese Character Reformation Commission, published a list of acceptable common character variants and their associated common variants which were to be banned. It was called the DEP 一体字整理表, or now referred to as the Common Variant Elimination List. It resulted in a list of 810 acceptable variant characters and 1,055 associated variant characters which were to be banned. It was discovered that Nai and Kang appeared twice. After several adjustments, February 1st, 1956, the list had 810 acceptable variant characters and 1,053 associated variant characters which were to be banned. In March 23, 1956, the characters Ban and Chuo were restored. October 10, 1986, 11 more characters were restored. March 25, 1988, these 15 characters were restored. September 3, 1993, the Department of Character Application Management of the State Language Commission issued a reply on the use of the character Rong, which was restored. In 1997, some words were omitted. The current list has 796 acceptable variant characters and 1,027 associated variant characters which are to be banned. There are several problems with this list. Problem 1. A true variant should have the exact same meaning, the exact same pronunciation, and equivalent logic. But some of the characters in this list have the same pronunciation, but different meanings. For example, in Rule C-220, he means nut, but he means to investigate. This is in fact a substitution of one character for another character that sounds the same, but they are not two different variants. Problem 2. This resulted in a modern generation of Chinese who are not able to recognize many common traditional variants. This table would be the first step in converting traditional text to simplified text. My database lists these rules indexed by a C prefix. For example, C684, as you see here. It means that originally we had the variant rule 684 concerning the characters yeah. They were supposed to be replaced with the character yeah. But in 1986, as you can see indicated here, yeah was restored and should be simplified as yeah. The current list can be found here. Table 2. 350 Standalone Simplifications. Standalone Simplifications. 步骤简化偏旁用的简化字. In 1955, a list of 350 characters was published, which were given simplified forms. These characters were to be simplified in their standalone form, but not if they were part of another character. My database lists these characters with a prefix. For instance, the simplification rule A145, as you see here, the simplification of the character for orchid. The list can be found here. There are several problems with this list. Problem 1. In several cases, multiple traditional characters are converged to one character. In the case of Rule A238, Tai, meaning typhoon, becomes Tai, meaning to talk, and Tai, meaning platform, becomes Tai, meaning to talk. This may cause some confusion sometimes. Problem 2. Sometimes the character is not actually simplified, but a substitution of a rare traditional character is inserted, such as A073, Ge. Problem 3. It is claimed that the simplification did not invent any new characters. This is not exactly true. Many characters were invented by strokifying supercursive forms of Chinese characters. They may claim that the character previously existed, but technically that is not true. My criteria is if it is not in the Kangxi dictionary, it is a new character. The character for newspaper is simplified by simplification rule A009, new, bao. The new indicates that bao is actually a new character and cannot be found in the Kangxi dictionary. Problem 4. In some cases, the character is not simplified because of some special use. Rule A071, gan, indicates that the character gan is simplified when pronounced gan, but not simplified when pronounced qian. Problem 5. Rule-based conflicts. In some cases, the new character already existed and had a different meaning, so this creates a conflict in meaning. In the case A013, biao, biao means a watch, but biao means the outer part of something. Note: it is important to note that in the 350 standalone simplifications, that when a component is simplified in one character, it does not mean that the same component is simplified in other characters. Example: although the component liao is simplified in liao in the rule A161 and rule A162, it is not simplified in the same way in other characters. Table 3. 132 Global Simplifications.Kezhou Jianhua Pianpang Yong de Jianhua Zi, or 132 Global Simplifications. In 1955, a list of 132 characters was published, which are simplified in their standalone form and are also simplified when used as components in another character. My database references these simplifications with a B prefix, as in B093, se, which means stingy. The list can be found here. There are several problems with this list. Problem 1. Rule-based conflicts. In some cases, the new character already existed and had a different meaning, so this creates a conflict in meaning. Note: Table 7 is a list of 8,105 characters that are accepted as legitimate simplified characters. In the Kangxi dictionary, there are more than 47,000 traditional characters. This means that if a character is outside this list of acceptable simplified characters, it does not get simplified. So, in modern computer fonts, which have all of these Kangxi characters and more, you may have characters which have traditional forms only. But these characters are not supposed to be used as simplified characters anyway. Table 4. Simplified radicals. Jianhua Pianpeng. Simplified radicals. A list of 14 character components that are to be simplified if they are components, but not if they are standalone characters. I indicate these rules by an R prefix. R09 Nu for Jing indicates that the character Jing, meaning gold or metal, is not simplified. But the character Jing in the character Jian, which means needle, is simplified. The 14 simplification rules for radicals is found here. Table 5. 1753 rule-based simplified characters. Jianhua Zi 和 Jianhua Pianpeng 的区来的 Jianhua Zi, or rule-based simplified characters. Originally, there were 1753 characters that were simplified according to Table 1, 2, 3, and 4. Problem: rule-based conflicts. In some cases, the new characters already existed and had a different meaning, so this created a conflict in meaning. The original table can be found here. Note: the number 1753 was out of the 1965 list of 6,196 acceptable simplified characters. In 2013, a list of 8,105 acceptable simplified characters. There was somewhat more than 2,200 of these rule-based character simplifications. Note: there are a few characters in this set of rule-based simplifications that are not simplified properly according to any rule. Example: the original character Nao, which means bustling, has the component Do, but it gets simplified to gate, Men, and we have the character Nao. Do looks like Men, but it is in fact not according to the rules. There are several cases like this. Table 6. New and old character forms. In 1965, there was really no rigorous definition of exactly how you were supposed to write traditional characters. There was the Kangxi dictionary, but if you looked at the characters in different fonts, along with Japanese, Korean, and Cantonese characters, you could find some annoying discrepancies. When they published a list of common use characters in 1965, they also published a detailed, rigorous list of how not to write the character. This came to be called the Xinjiu Zixing, or the new and old character forms. Some of these rules were so trivial that they were eventually ignored, but some of them were quite significant. In fact, The old character forms were not really rigorously defined. I remember reading traditional Chinese and finding the character dui. I wasted a lot of time trying to find it in the dictionary when I already knew the character dui, which means to convert. Dui became the simplified form and dui became the traditional form. But then they had a lot of very trivial rules, such as ing and ing, which means to print. The difference was so trivial that it was largely ignored. My database lists these differences with an F prefix. F032 Wang, for instance. The Chinese old and new forms can be found here. There are a couple of confusing terms. The Japanese also had a period of simplification of kanji characters, usually referred to as the Shinjō Ziti, or the new and old character fonts. It was similar to Chinese simplification, but not quite as extensive. Just for reference, I show here a pointer to the Japanese simplified rules, which can be found here. Table 7. 8,105 complete list of simplified characters. After applying tables 1 through 6, what do you do about the very rare characters? In 1965, the Chinese government published a list of 6,196 characters. 1965 list of 6,196 simplified characters was called the Yingshuo Tongyong Hanzi Zixing Biao, or the List of Common Use Chinese Character Forms. It was supposed to be a list of all the characters you would ever need to use. It was pretty complete for the most part. There were a couple of problems. Problem 1. Many Chinese liked to name their children using obscure Chinese characters no one else knew. They thought it made their kids sound more intelligent or something. So, if your name used one of these characters, you had to change your name. The same problem applied to many place names, with characters that were so rare, few people knew how to pronounce them. Some places also had to change their names. By the 1980s, people were beginning to use computers, and in 1980, the first computer character list was implemented. It became the de facto standard for Chinese characters. The 1980 computer standard, GB 2312-1980, of 6,763 simplified characters, was kind of a default list of simplified characters. Since people were becoming computer literate and their computers were originally limited to this set of computer characters. In 1988, the list was updated. 1988 list of 7,000 simplified characters, the Xindai Hanyu Qiangyong Zibiao, or Modern Chinese Common Use Character List. It consisted of 2,500 most common characters used as a standard for basic literacy, plus 1,000 second most common characters used as a standard for adult literacy, and 3,000 less common characters. As of 2021, although there is a 2013 standard list, this 1988 list still seems to be the usual standard. In 2013, the list was updated to its current standard, the Tongyong Guifan Hanzibiao, which consists of 8,105 simplified characters. That is, 3,500 common characters, 3,000 less common characters, and 1,605 rare characters. This is the 1988 list of 7,000 characters, which is, as of 2021, the usual default standard. If you are a publisher, you will have to follow the above rules when publishing books or periodicals. With the advent of computers, things became a bit more flexible and, at the same time, more complicated. Thanks for watching. Thanks to everyone who helped me. Valuable comments are always welcome.